The question a lot of people have is, why is it when a person gets to Washington, he begins to overlook the will of the people back home, except when election day nears, he starts remembering. But in between the time of his election and his re-election, he often seems to be more concerned about pleasing the folks in Washington, pleasing the media, and kind of ignoring the folks back home who elected him, kind of ignoring the majority of the people as a whole, kind of ignoring the good of the whole for maybe the good of his party or the good of several other things. What are the reasons why the people that we send to Washington seem so distant from the will of the people? There's 7 different reasons, and I'll cover these with you. The first is polls. Polls are a very strong influence on candidates. When a person, or officials in office, when a person gets to Washington, they read the polls very carefully, especially the executive. They're often governed by polls. But so are our senators and representatives, very strongly influenced by them. And they'll read these polls, and oftentimes the polls are somewhat contrived. In other words, the polls often do not reflect what we think they reflect, because a poll can be skewed by how the questions are asked, and oftentimes polls are askew because the people taking the polls maybe ask more people on their side of the aisle than the other side of the aisle. So not all polls are scientific. Some polls are pretty good. At the end of the poll, it may say plus or minus 3% degrees of accuracy. But that may or may not be true. So polls are a strong influence on candidates that take them sometimes away from the will of the people. Sometimes, if the polls are accurate, it can actually be helpful, but they're not always accurate. So this is why in every poll that is generated, the people running for office need to know the actual questions that are asked. Oftentimes I'll see somebody says, this poll shows this, and then I look at the actual questions that are asked. It's totally different than the guy made it sound like they were supposed to be. Okay, the second influence on the guy once he gets into office are political groups. These are different groups, like could be churches or committees, different types of businesses, political organizations. They will spend time trying to influence him, tell him they will raise money for him, and apply pressure to him to change his mind. The third thing are lobbyists, pressure groups, and large corporations. Let's say the politician has a certain way that he thinks the folks back home wants him to vote, but he doesn't hear too much from the folks back home. He gets letters now and then, but who he really gets a lot of attention to are corporations, lobbyists, pressure groups. They come to him, they'll wine and dine him, they'll visit him one-to-one in his office, and they'll apply a lot of pressure on him to vote a certain way. And they'll also apply pressure on his colleagues, and his colleagues will apply pressure on him. Now, when he votes according to the interests of a lobbyist group, is he voting the will of the people? No, he's not. He's voting somebody else's will. Not the will of the people that elected him, but he's voting someone else's will. Another thing that happens, the fourth category, is trading votes. Let's say, a politician wants a project, say a dam built here in Idaho somewhere, and he needs funds for it. And he doesn't have the support of Congress, and the senator from New York says, look, if you support restoration of Niagara Falls or something like this, and support my bill, I will support your funding. So we'll do some trading here. And so they will trade votes, and by trading votes, our guy winds up voting for a New York project that has nothing to do with the will of the people here, and the New York congressman or senator votes for funding for a project here that has nothing to do with the will of the people in New York. And so when a vote is traded, we're actually trading the will of the people. We're bypassing the will of the people, and we're representing when our guy would then vote for funding on the New York project, he's not voting the will of the people that elected him. He's voting for somebody else's will that doesn't have anything to do with the will of the people in Idaho. So we want to do away with the trading of votes. The fifth thing that creates a problem is just plain ignorance. For instance, as of late, the bills that have been going through Congress have been humongous. We used to have bills of just a couple hundred pages. Matter of fact, the bill that was passed in Arizona that's creating so much stir is only 100 pages long. But this health care bill, I hear different amounts, but last I heard it was somewhere around 2,500 pages, which is a tremendous amount of reading. It's so much reading that Nancy Pelosi made the statement that we have to pass this bill to find out what is in it. That's an amazing statement to make. We have to pass a bill to find out what's in it. Well, if we have to pass a bill to find out what's in it, is that representing the will of the people? If the congressman is ignorant of what's in the bill, if maybe he's glanced over, read 3 or 4 pages, what will often happen is the congressman, when he's up against a bill of 1,000 pages or so, he'll be informed of the bill not by reading it himself, but aides will explain to him what is in it, and the media will explain to him what is in it. If he watches television every night, if we watch television every night, we probably know as much of what's in the bill as many of the congressmen that are voting in it. Who knows what's in a 2,500-page bill? There could be, I keep hearing horror stories of what's in it. I won't take time to repeat them all. But there's new things coming out every day in the health care bill that doesn't have anything to do with health that are kind of scary. And like I say, they don't have anything to do with health care, many of the things in that 2,500-page bill.